So for the big 40th, the girlfriend decided to really go big and splurge for a fishing trip I've always wanted to take, hunting for giant bluefins. But this trip is extra special because we're not just fishing on any old charter boat. Today, we're on the fvtuna.com. For anyone who's never seen the show, it's one of the boats that's been on National Geographic's Wicked Tuna since season 1. So with 15 hours on the water and a lot of downtime, I had a good opportunity to film the highlights. But before things got exciting, the day had to start somewhere. And by day, I mean barely past midnight. Captain Dave Carrero sets the departure time based on his best estimate of, something? Today this means leaving the slip at 1 a.m. for the 3.5-hour trip from Gloucester to the southern tip of Stellwagen, just off the coast of Provincetown. Cruising along at night was actually pretty peaceful and certainly quiet. Everyone else aside from Dave was sleeping, but I couldn't manage any of that. After arriving on site, it was time to start scanning for marks, aka big fish on sonar. After getting a couple of hits, we dropped anchor. For reasons that are still unclear to me, we didn't drop lines right away. Instead, we kind of just sat there for about a half hour, watched the 4:30 a.m. sunrise over the Atlantic, and listened to Dave preemptively complain about the number of boats that he assumed would be showing up for the holiday weekend. When it was finally time to set up, I got to check out their really cool looking live well, holding about a dozen 10-inch whitings. It's pretty funny to be rigging a line with a bait fish big enough to be filleted. After that, we pretty quickly transitioned into what would be the majority of the day, doing absolutely nothing but waiting and waiting and waiting. Still, I did use some of that time to grab footage of the boat. For anyone who's a fan of the show and was curious what it looks like below deck, here it is. Pretty much a couple of pads that everyone takes turns napping on, plus a small marine head. We did finally get some excitement when Sandro called fish on mid-morning. Sadly though, between the way it was taking line and the marks it was leaving on sonar, they pretty quickly identified it as a shark. I think probably because we had been out 9-ish hours or so at that point, and this was really the first thing to have happened all morning, he asked Megan to bring it up. Compared to the tuner later in the day, this poor beagle came up fast. If I had to guess, like under 5 minutes. Like, once he realized he was hooked, he thought to himself, well, I guess it's just my time. Why bother fighting it?
That's spooky. It's coming at you like that.
Oh, wow.
You need to get off the hook.
After he was cut loose, it was back to more waiting and watching the crew perform the seemingly unending task of cleaning slime algae from the lines. And then, just like that, as I was sitting inside reading a book and thinking to myself that the day was going to end without anything other than a lazy shark bite, and being mildly disappointed that we spent a couple $1,000s for a boat ride to nowhere, we hear another "Fish on! Fish on!" announcement from Sandro.
Sunday just hit 25. Actually, just let go and walk away. Nothing to do. Alright. When that stops, listen to it. You gotta start going. Hand up there. Put the hand on it and just relax.
This guy's working good.
You can hear them. Wrapped up right now.
For the next 3 hours, Megan and I took turns on the rod. Even my dad hopped in there for a couple of minutes. It's really unbelievable how strong these fish are. They'll run out 100 meters of line with 50 pounds of drag in just a couple of seconds, and they'll do it over and over again.
Keep going, don't stop. Keep going, you got it, keep going. Keep going. Watch that rock.
Don't judge me too harshly for some of my alternative reeling techniques. The truth of the matter is that your forearms, triceps, hands, shoulders all start turning into wet noodles in relatively short order. It really upped my respect for people who do this every day. You start trying to compensate with weird body angles, trying anything you can to get the weight on your legs or any other place you still have some strength left. When you finally do see some color, it's a huge relief and also a source of paranoia. I've watched wicked tuna enough times to know that things can hit the fan at pretty much any point up until the tail rope is on. And after 3-ish hours and a wrecked arm, I was pretty invested in this fish. However, you also learn that just because you see it doesn't mean you can harpoon it. In fact, it probably did a dozen swim-bys before it was close enough to take a shot. When it finally did get there, I got to see firsthand how hard it is to actually hit a moving target underwater. Got him. Finally. It actually took 2 harpoons. One got tangled around the line and had to be cut off. I was shocked when they were able to recover it as they brought the fish in. Now here's something I didn't know. After the tail rope is on, they don't winch it on board right away. It actually gets bled out and cooled down in the water for about a half hour before being pulled up and processed. According to Dave, if the fish is under about 250 pounds, they'll just bring it up by hand. But over that, and they'll use a rope hoist powered by the anchor winch to bring it up. Which meant it was time for the moment I'd been looking forward to all day.
Center of the tail? Yeah. 96 and a half.
96 and a half. Nice.
Probably 97.
Now this next portion of the video requires a little bit of viewer discretion advised disclaimers. This is the part where the animal is processed. You know, the part they conveniently don't show on Wicked Tuna. I still found it interesting, but if blood and guts aren't your thing, it's time to nope out. Sandro first made 2 incisions, one in the tail and then one opening up what I assume are the intestines or whatever the fish equivalent are, then inserted a back flush hose. When water pressure is applied, it distends the stomach and expels its contents onto the deck. I guess he's been pretty voraciously eating up fish because his stomach was full of the remnants of them. Next up is the gill plate, which needs to be removed, with a sawzall equipped with a demo blade. I asked if I could help with the preparation, but was denied. That was kind of disappointing. I mean, we did pay for the fishing equivalent of the girlfriend experience. The gills are then removed, all while the back flush continues to run because it would be pretty messy without that. The final step is the removal of organs. On the deck, I got an up-close view of the stomach, liver, gonads, heart, and what I'm pretty sure are the intestines. It was then packed with a bunch of ice for the hour-ish ride back to Gloucester Harbor. Pulling in was pretty fun. We got to see a number of familiar sights from the show. We also got to witness firsthand Dave's ability to back a single screw boat better than anyone else I've ever seen. At weigh-in, we met another familiar face, none other than Buyer PJ.
You want to send? Can you send it to my code? Gimme. Watch out. I have to fit that the thing.
The tail cut process is pretty similar to what's shown on TV. According to Dave, this was a low-quality fish, not much fat at all. But apparently that's normal for this time of year. I guess they fatten up over the summer. Oh yeah, it is pretty like rubbery. Anyone want to guess the weight? Our guess is 350.
Yeah, maybe 300 something.
My guess is 350.
Looks a lot smaller without all of the rest of his bits.
It does look smaller without all the appendages.
Yeah, like 25%.
Yeah, is that about what they lose?
Yeah. That's the way.
I went 350.
I'm gonna say 385.
Oh, 388 or 387.
Whoa!
So here's a fun fact I learned on this trip. The price per pound often cited on the show, it's nonsense. Just a ballpark guess by the buyer for entertainment purposes. Actual prices are determined by either wholesale markets in the US or auction markets in Japan. Dave, or anyone else for that matter, won't actually know what he'll get paid for this fish for a couple of weeks. And, well, that about wraps up the day. It was certainly a lot of fun, expensive, sure, but Dave does give you 10% of whatever he gets for the catch. But like I said, we won't actually know what that is for a few weeks.